I'm now going to talk to you about another field of research, still within the framework of this same research theme, meaning the ecological and economic interest of agroforestry associations. This time, our field is in the west of Sumatra, in the region called Minangkabau, which is the name of the social group that lives within this region. The agroforestry associations within this region are what we call Asian village agroforests, meaning plots that are outside of the village and which look like forests but which are actually plantations created by man on very steep terrain and with a large variety of plants. In this region, we collected data with different methods, and I would above all like to illustrate with this case the reasoning that we must undertake in order to select the sampling and above all the relevant survey unit. It is not always at the level of the family or the farming concern or the company, meaning the basic stakeholder in socio-economy, that will be relevant with regard to our survey units. We are in a specific situation because the study is taking place in a territory that is defined by the inside of a volcanic crater. So we're on the slopes of the crater inside. It is a very large crater which measures over 10 kilometers long. Its center is occupied by a lake. Around the lake are 20 or so villages spread around the lake on the shores of the lake. The shores of the lake are relatively flat and are used as rice paddies, irrigated rice paddies. They form a crown around the lake. But due to the topography of the crater, to the north, we have a very wide shore, which measures more than 4 kilometers in width. So we have an abundance of rice paddies to irrigate, whereas to the south, we have the slopes that fall directly into the lake. And we have small, very narrow terraces developed as rice paddies and that can only be cultivated manually. Above these rice paddies, along the slopes, you have the agroforests planted and grown up to 800 meters in altitude. And above 800 meters, until the top of the crater, we have a forestry space which is not cultivated or exploited for reasons of protection against erosion, because the slopes are very steep. In this multidisciplinary study, we jointly used several methods. We used direct observations, agroforestry gardens, drawings on transects sampled within the gardens, botanic sampling, and interviews using semi-structured interviews with the village dwellers. The first survey allowed us to describe how the land was distributed amongst the families, and it showed a relative homogeneity of the farming concerns, in contradiction with the theoretical framework of at outset, which was the framework of agricultural production used in Occidental society with populations deprived of land and resources. Within a sociological framework such as this one, we have a very strong hypothesis of diversity of the farming concerns and, above all, the surface areas and resources exploited by the different farming concerns. In this region of Indonesia, which is very well known for its matrilinear society, we observed that land, the rice paddies, irrigation, and also the trees in the agroforest are distributed amongst the families in a relatively fair manner. Each year, the distribution of resources of the lineages is rediscussed between the different families. We therefore have families that have the same resources, that have the same social organization, meaning this matrilinear organization, which have the same ecological context in terms of rainfall, hydraulic resources, quality of soil, topography, etc., within the same village at least, and who lead their agricultural production in the same economic context, in particular concerning the commercialization of products and the price they sell these products for. And in this semi-structured interview, it very quickly became apparent that the main criteria of differentiation that we could have between the different farming concerns, and at the level of the agroforests too, stems from the topography of the crater and is observed at the level of the village from the north, from the south, or east and west, and not between the families of a same village. And this is why we stopped at a sampling at the village level. We chose one village from the north, which has a lot of rice paddies and that exports rice, that cultivates its rice paddies with mechanized equipment, and that has a certain type of agroforest. And we chose a village from the south, which imports rice, great quantities of rice, with very few rice paddies available, that has another type of agroforest. We find other types of trees in this agroforest, and we chose one village in the east, which is representative of the eastern and western shores, where the village situation is intermediate. They're just autosufficient in rice, and there is a third type of agroforest. So, in the case where socioeconomic diversity is observed at the scale of the village and not at the scale of the family or the farming concerns, we must not hesitate to sample at the scale of the village and to adopt as the relevant research unit the village. Of course, you can't survey a village, you survey people. But here we surveyed one farming concern and one family, which was considered as the archetype of the village agricultural approach. And this family explains how the agroforests work, how the rice paddies worked, and the reasons behind the choice of the trees within the agroforest. We reproduced this process in the three villages that represented the topographic diversity of the crater. And we thought that with this we would cover the variety of different situations. And for each village, we chose to maintain a semi-structured interview in order to investigate in depth the qualitative description of the socio-economic functions of agroforests, quite simply by bringing out the differences between the three villages. Still within the framework of this research on the evaluation of agroforests in Indonesia, but this time in the south of Sumatra, in the province of Lampung, we encountered a difficulty to define the relevant survey unit. We had farming concerns that operated in a rather complex way. Some of these concerns seemed only to exist in the wet season, with a farm manager, his family, temporary inhabitants and temporary fields cultivated in the forests, and then these farming concerns disappeared in the dry season. The members of that farm and the family returned to live in the big family house with the grandfather, the big brother, and all of the nephews and nieces and grandchildren, and became family helpers, working in the family rice paddies, which were cultivated by the big brother. We also observed that we had dynamics of clearing and planting in the forests that were carried out at the level of the nucleus family, meaning it's one couple with their children who decide where they're going to open up a forest, for how long they will be cultivating these plots in the forest, what they're going to plant in these plots, and essentially in the wet season. So we wondered whether the relevant survey unit would be the extended family, including the generation of the grandparents, the big brother, the younger brothers married or not with their children, and the other younger brothers and sisters. Or should we take the nucleus family? With nucleus families of a younger type, meaning the younger brothers within a family who sometimes cultivate the forest, sometimes help the rice paddies of the older brother, and nucleus families of the older brother type that reside for the entire year with the grandparents and in the dry season with their younger brothers, and who look after the irrigated rice paddies and certain agroforests close to the village. Of course, the answer to this question depends on the question that we're studying, meaning the research theme. If we want to analyze the management of the rice paddy and old agroforests close to the village, rice paddies and agroforests inherited by the older brothers, it is better to take the extended family as the relevant survey unit. The rice paddies and older agroforests are managed at the scale of the extended family. And technical innovation is fairly limited due to social rules and obligations that we can understand in terms of the lineage. So we have to remain at this general level in terms of relevant survey unit. However, if our object of research is the dynamics of clearing and planting in the forest, it is more appropriate to choose the nucleus family as our survey unit. And this is what was done for a later survey with a closed interview on a representative sample of nucleus families in the village in order to measure the speed of the pioneer front and the speed at which the forest is disappearing and the speed of planting of the new agroforests. So this case illustrates also the complementarity of different survey methods, because it is the exploratory survey using semi-structured interviews which allowed us to understand the existence of these two types of farming concerns, older brother and younger brother. And it is the closed questionnaire on representative sample of the population, statistically speaking, which allowed us to measure the speed at which the pioneer frontier progressed in the forest.